I unearthed the haunted truth behind the Henderson twins' mysterious disappearance in 1851. I never should have opened that door. It seemed innocuous, just an old creaky entrance to an attic filled with dusty memories. But the moment I twisted the knob, I felt a cold wave of dread. The air around me thickened, charged with something unseen. My heart raced. I stood in the hallway of the abandoned Henderson estate, a place woven with legends. The hushed stories of the twins had haunted this town for decades. Ellen and Sarah, beautiful girls with bright laughter, vanished without a trace one eerie autumn night. The whispers spoke of shadows and darker things. I could almost hear them now. The house loomed over me, dark and full of secrets. Its walls oozed a chill, and the silence was heavy. I breathed in the musty scent of mold mixed with the faintest hint of decay. Shadows danced in the corners as I stepped into the gloom. My fingers tingled with a mix of excitement and terror. Creaking floorboards echoed like the heartbeats of the house itself. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, the remnants of their laughter still hanging in the air, twisted now into something sinister. Moments passed, but they felt like hours. I turned and jumped at the flicker of movementa curtains swaying gently, as if someone had just rushed past. What was that? I whispered to myself. The answer came in the form of a soft, incoherent whisper, barely audible, but immediate enough to make the hair on my neck stand. I strained to listen, but it faded into the darkness as quickly as it arrived. My mind raced. Was it just the house settling? Or was it them? A cold draft swept through the attic, tugging at my clothes. I stumbled back, heart pounding in my chest. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The room felt alive, whispering secrets I was not meant to know. I shivered, grasping at the old trunk. Its lid rusted shut. What could it hold? Suddenly, an object on the desk rattled violently, breaking the stillness. My breath caught, the chill ratchet tightening around my throat. The colorful wallpaper, once bright, seemed to shift and meld into grotesque faces, mocking me. Shadows stretched, curling around my legs like tendrils of smoke. I wanted to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. Then there it was, a figure, ethereal and hazy, just beyond the reach of the dim light. I blinked, trying to focus, but it was gone. My heart stopped. I could feel my pulse in my ears, a relentless drum echoing in the silence. Was this the spirit of one of the twins? Or was it something worse? A scream lodged in my throat, threatening to escape. I needed to leave, needed to find the light again. But before I could turn, the door slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the dust from the rafters. My breath quickened, panic seizing my chest as the darkness closed in. What terrible truth awaited me in the shadows? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The attic plunged into an oppressive silence, the only sound the low, rhythmic thudding of my heart against my ribcage. I turned slowly, moving toward the door like a moth drawn to a flame, desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. My fingertips brushed the splintered wood, but as I leaned against it to push open the heavy door, a breath of freezing air swept across my neck. It carried with it whispers, words torn from anguish and despair. Help us, find us. I froze. The air constricted, squeezing the breath from my lungs, and I lost my footing, tumbling backward into the clutter of the attic. Shadows congregated around me, swirling like storm clouds, thickening until they obscured every faint glimmer of light. Panic set in. I could barely make out the contours of the room, but the whispers intensified, their urgency growing. Please, clutching my head, I staggered to my feet, searching for the source of the voices. Were they real, or a figment of my imagination twisting in the suffocating atmosphere? The specter I thought I had seen was now embodied in the voices. Echoing memories of laughter turned to sorrow. As I staggered to the desk, I noticed something gleaming beneath the dusted delicate trinket box. Intricately carved, its lid partly ajar. Compelled by an unseen force, I knelt and opened it. My fingers grazed something soft silk ribbon, faded black and yellow. The memory struck like ice to my veins. The color of their dresses the night they disappeared. I pulled it free, inhaling the faint musty scent that lingered. Was it death or just fear? Suddenly, darkness bloomed like a blossoming flower around me, swallowing every ounce of light. The voices converged, now a fervent cacophony, screaming in agony. I felt the floor tremble beneath me, and the chaotic energy surged, shaking everything in the attic. My breath quickened, the walls closing in with the weight of 1,000 sorrows. That I climbed to my feet, trying to steady myself, but an oppressive force slammed into my chest, driving me to my knees. I gasped for air as the whispers transformed, now clearer, laced with desperation. Help, find us. They were not just voices, they were echoes of the twins, trapped in the very fibers of this house. Panic surged, an instinct kicked in. I needed to escape. Scrambling, I edged toward the door, but as I reached for the knob, a disembodied hand cold as winter wrapped around my wrist, pulling me back with a force I couldn't comprehend. Stay. The voice was a haunting melody of sorrow intertwined with malevolence. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the shadows that encircled me. A piercing light splattered across the attic floor, my heart racing as a flicker of hope ignited deep within me. The light was coming from the trunk. That I turned, almost mesmerized by the golden aura cascading from its seams, illuminating the room through the swirling darkness. Trembling, I jumped at the thought that the trunk might hold the answers I desperately sought. What happened to the twins? What horror trapped their souls here? With trembling fingers, I approached the trunk, the chaos around me fading into an eerie hush. The golden light pulsed like a heartbeat, each throb beckoning me to draw closer. It beckoned promises of revelation, but also potential doom. Deep down, I felt compelled to pry it open, yet fear knotted my stomach. What might I unleash? Then, just as I was about to lift the lid, a deafening crash violently shook the day's stillness. The house groaned, splinters raining from the ceiling as the air thickened with the taste of raw electricity. A voice rumbled through the chaos, this time grave and unyielding. Leave her or suffer the fate of the twins. I froze, my breath hitching, heart pounding like a war drum. The trunk shook violently, the golden light flickering, pulsing, as if warning me to decide quickly. Time slipped through my fingers like grains of sand, and I could feel the suffocating dread enveloping me tighter. Then, a sudden panic surged through me as the attic door creaked open slowly, an eerie invitation into the darkness beyond. My vision, blurred, the shadows writhing as I teetered on the edge of discovery or obliteration. Behind me, the voice warned again, more desperate now. Don't open it. With one last look at the glowing trunk, I felt the tug of the house compelling me toward the open door. I was faced with a choice, one that would either lead to freedom or trap me in the horrifying fate of the twin sisters forever. And then, just before I made a decision, darkness enveloped me completely, and the last thing I heard, like a thunderstorm crashing, was their screams, echoes of a torment that would culminate in the truth beneath the warped floorboards of the house. I stumbled backward, heart racing, teeth chattering from the cold that seemed to seep through my very bones. The screams of the twins wrapped around me, drowning out my rational thoughts as fear took hold. The attic was collapsing in on itself, and I could feel the very air pressing against my chest. I was trapped not by the walls, but by the terror that wound itself around my mind like a serpent coiling tighter, suffocating. That I glanced toward the trunk, its golden glow flickering erratically, as if sharing in my undoing. The echoes of the twins grew louder, their cries clawing through the thick haze of despair. Help us! They pleaded, their voices now a simultaneous wail. But what form of help could I offer from the heart of this unfolding horror? My instincts kicked in, a primal survival mode igniting within me. I had to escape the attic, to flee this malevolent suffocation. The door loomed before me, an unsettling gateway to a darkness that hungered for souls. I edged toward it, the shadows pulsating like a heartbeat waiting for me to make my move. But as I reached the threshold, the ground beneath me trembled, sending waves of dust swirling into the air like a choking mist. There was a shifting behind me, a stirring of the darkness that begged to be acknowledged. I hesitated, glancing back once more at the trunk. My chest constricted, torn between the allure of the truth it might hold and the raw instinct screaming at me to flee. Help us. The voices twisted into something far more sinister, reverberating through the air until it morphed into a deep, growling discord that felt like it was resonating from the very walls of the house. The spirit of vengeance was upon us. The attic's air thickened, sharp and cloying, and I felt that presence behind meth warmth of another's breath. I whipped around to see what I had subconsciously feared but could never fully process. Two shadowy figures emerged from the darkness, their outlines indistinct, their faces inscrutable. They stood there, silent, their mouths twisted into mock echoes of the twins I so desperately sought to uncover. Were they protecting the secrets of the trunk, or simply waiting for the moment to drag me into their eternal torment? Help us, they croaked again, only this time, their voices were layered, an unholy chorus that vibrated in my bones. I stumbled against the doorframe, fear paralyzing me. I wanted to scream, but my voice betrayed me. A choked whisper caught in the mire of dread wrapped around my throat. The figures glided closer, hands outstretched, fingers gnarled like twigs. I felt my instincts screaming at me to run, to leap out of the threshold and into the uncertain shadows beyond. But I was rooted to the spot, the weight of their gazes pinning me down. Then, just as I thought I could no longer withstand their silent plea, a sudden rush of air blasted through the room, as if the house had exhaled a breath it had been holding for centuries. The shadows rippled, and for a moment, the figures seemed to dissipate into the darkness. Their whispers shifted to a hissing cacophony of rage, shaking the foundations of reality itself. Leave now or be lost like us. With a jolt of adrenaline breaking the paralysis, I spun back toward the door. My fingers scrambled for the knob, desperate to escape, and as I turned it, a painful, guttural wail erupted from behind me, a lamentation so raw it felt as if the soul of the house itself was unraveling. As I burst through the doorway, the air crackled violently. The world beyond the attic was no safe haven. The walls of the house seemed to groan in rage, the floor beneath me tilting as if trying to swallow me whole. I sprinted across the corridor, but even in my desperation, I could hear the fabric of the darkness unfurling behind me, an insatiable presence eager to reclaim what it had lost. I raced down the stairs, every creak of the ancient wood echoing like cracking bones. But just as I reached the front door, it slammed shut with a force that rattled the windows. Panic surged hot in my veins. I pounded against it, feeling the unyielding surface mock my frantic desire for freedom. Then came the whispers again, now a breathy chant, swirling through the air. Find us. Find us. Remember us. They wove through the darkness like fingers clawing, beckoning me back as if aware of my growing dread, of the secrets yet to be uncovered. And in a heart-wrenching moment of clarity, the dreadful realization struck me. The twins were not merely lost souls. They were prisoners of this malevolent force, entwined eternally with its haunting. My heart thrashed as I turned back toward the staircase. Forcing my feet to obey, I marched deeper into the house, drawn again toward the attic, where the trunk pulsated with golden light. As I ascended those crooked, creaking steps, the whispers crescendoed into a symphony of despair, wrapping around me tighter than a shroud. I was no longer just a seeker of truth. I was becoming part of their tragic tale. And as I reached for the trunk once more, the golden light dimmed, replaced by shadows pulling me back into the suffocating grip of the past. The trunk began to tremble violently, its lid lifting as a chilling wind poured forth. And just then, through the chasm of shadows circling me, an echo cut through, one desperate word that echoed louder than the rest. Help! And in that moment, the room erupted into chaos. The air bloomed with a dark, foul energy, and the ground trembled as if the house itself was screaming for release. Shadows surged like a tidal wave, sweeping toward me, constricting like a vice, and I understood. I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. What lay inside the trunk remained unknown, hidden behind the veil of darkness rushing toward me like a predator at dusk. And at that moment, I realized that my fate was no longer in my hands. It twisted, intangible, forever ensnared with the tragic essence of the twins, and the house that imprisoned them. One final flash of light ignited the room, and beneath the roiling shadows, I felt something shift. Something dreadful was awakening, and I might be the very catalyst for its return. The trunk's lid opened slowly, as if resisting the pull of the storm that encircled it. A pulsing light emanated from within, flickering with shades of gold and crimson, casting eerie reflections on the walls in grotesque shadows. It was not light that beckoned me forward but something more primal, a lure that pulled at the deepest corners of my mind, promising answers I was afraid to uncover. A voice as soft as a whisper slipped through the chaos, resonating directly in my thoughts. "Help us, free us." It was their plea again, now woven through with urgency and a familiar warmth that ignited a flicker of hope amid the suffocating dread. The twins' despair resonated within me, a cruel reminder of the ties that bound us together through grief past, present, and future. Just as I thought myself steady, the shadows jerked violently, a single dark tendril lunging from the swirling mass to coil around my ankle, anchoring me to the floor like a cruel reminder of the inescapable fate I was trying to escape. An icy breath snaked up my spine. My heart throbbed with a frantic rhythm. The instincts screaming within me were useless against the pulling darkness that surrounded me. "Help us!" The plea morphed into silence as the light swelled, illuminating an image buried deep within. I stumbled back, clenching my teeth against the urge to scream. Before me stood fleeting visions of two little girls dressed in white, their faces pale as moonlight, framed with flowing black hair, standing in a blooming garden. A fleeting glimpse of laughter, then they vanished into the shadows of despair. But the laughter fled, replaced by a grim spectacle of cracked earth, wilting flowers, and weeping trees. Their garden died with them, the echoes of their stolen childhood resounding in silence. I understood then. The twins were not the only ones caught by the house. They were merely the victims of a darkness older than time, one that craved power amidst despair. And I was a pawn in its cruel game. That I staggered forward, instinctively reaching for the trunk, my fingers grazing its ancient, weathered surface, trailing to the latch as the whispers grew louder, surrounding me as if the house had come alive. "Release us, find us," they twisted in my mind, growing into a terrifying chorus that resonated with every heartbeat. With a sudden movement, my hand slammed against the latch, and the trunk sprang open fully. The golden light erupted like a warm tide, and in its wake came a cacophony of voices, spilling forth from the void a wall of sorrow and despair that washed over me in seething waves. The house trembled beneath me, each shudder reverberating in the very marrow of my bones. What manifested within was not merely dust or forgotten relics, but an ethereal mist, swirling around as if seeking to escape its prison. I turned away in fright, but the voices pressed into me, invading my mind, sharing the history I had fought to ignore. I staggered back as images flooded my vision. The twins, their laughter still dancing on the edges of memory, morphing into sorrowful whispers as a dark presence loomed over their innocent forms, a shadowy specter wrapped in malice. The spirit of vengeance that demanded their suffering revealed itself, a grotesque figure wrapped in rags that whispered secrets tainted with blood. The room spun as its eyes bore into my soul, wrenching my heart with an unbearable grief. With each pulse of light, the essence of the twins was torn further into the void as I stood paralyzed, caught in a web of memory and horror that threatened to consume me. The trunk began to vibrate furiously, shadows writhing under the golden glow that lost its brilliance with every moment, threatening to extinguish forever. I could feel the fabric of the house twisting around me, turning toward a malevolent crescendo, the whispers transforming into shrieks of rage and fury. "Find us, free us!" They reverberated like thunder, drowning me in despair as they beckoned for a release I might not be able to grant. I flung myself backward away from the trunk just as a thick fog of darkness surged out, as if ancient spirits sought to reclaim their dominion. The world around me pulsated with malevolence, and I realized the entity within would not stop until it had pulled me into its depths, consumed by whatever fate awaited the children it had once held captive. Just then, a sudden crash echoed through the hall, splintering the illusion of safety that clung to the corners of the house. I glanced over my shoulder as the door quaked under unseen pressure, tremors sending a pulse of dread through the air. It burst open violently, revealing a swirling expanse of darkness behind it, beckoning me toward the unknown with unimaginable horrors that lay. As the wind shrieked from the void, I bolted back toward the trunk, desperation fueling my actions. But something collided against me, a force, neither corporeal nor visible, tugging at my limbs, pulling me closer to the emerging darkness. I understood then that I had awakened something far more sinister than I ever intended to uncover, and before I could gather my resolve, a blood-curdling scream split the air, a sound that was both familiar and foreign. It shattered the moment as I recognized the voices of the twins, merging with the darkness, echoing my own name in a lament, one final request that shattered the boundary of reality. Help us before it's too late. In that instant, the shadows engulfed me, the last vestiges of light flickering out as the chilling touch of the void swept me into its embrace. And as everything faded to black, I understood. I had stepped into the abyss, and I might not return. The darkness clung to me, a thick smog that swallowed every trace of light as I fell into its unforgiving grasp. Time seemed meaningless, a mere whisper in the cacophony of tortured souls echoing around me. I struggled to breathe, drowning in the chilling dread that surged like a tide, pulling me deeper into its cold embrace. Pain sliced through the veil, a sharp jab of awareness that grounded me. I gasped as a jolt tore through my limbs, and I blinked harshly, fighting to focus amid the chaos. The oppressive atmosphere shifted, thickening with a palpable tension that stung my skin. Muffled cries filled the air, an ensemble of desperate voices reaching out from the void, intertwining with the absent laughter of the twin-san unholy symphony of anguish. Help us! A voice pierced through the din, clear yet hauntingly familiar. The desperation echoed within me, pulling my heart into a tight vice. It was a chill that sank deeper than fear. It gnawed at my sanity, a haunting reminder of the twins' plight that had woven into my very being. I tore myself away from the bottomless dark, seeking something within the shadows, anything that could provide a clue or an escape. Gradually, the darkness began to ebb, revealing a labyrinth of twisted hallways and flickering lights. The walls were now etched with grotesque faces that wept hollow tears, their mouths twisted in anguished screams, as if reflecting the suffering that lay buried within the house. The air felt thick and stagnant, each breath laden with despair. Further twisting the knot of anguish tightening within me with shaky hands, I reached out along the wall, my fingers grazing the cool, damp surface as I traced my way cautiously through the eerie corridor. Each step released a chorus of whispers that rose like a tempest, each syllable tinged with bitterness and regret. Find us, the twins' voices became a mantra, haunting and insistent, urging me to delve deeper into the heart of darkness. Yet, as I moved forward, the oppressive atmosphere shifted again, and a new sensation crept under my skin, a primal fear prickling my senses. Something was watching. I froze, straining to listen for any sign of movement, any indication of the unseen presence that lurked within the shadows. The whispers morphed into low growls, as if the very walls were a chorus of discontent rumbling in warning. Suddenly, a door loomed at the end of the hallway, its wood splintered and warped like the house itself. The whispers became frantic, urging me onward, but every fiber of my being screamed to turn back. That door, guardian of what secrets lay beyond, offered no reassurance as I approached. A jolt of freezing air rushed past me, swirling with an overwhelming sense of wrath, displacing my breath in a suffocating fog. I hesitated, the echoes of laughter melded with cries in a jarring juxtaposition, leaving me torn between the longing to answer their call and the primal instinct to flee. With a surge of resolve, I gripped the cold metal handle, my heart thrumming violently against my ribcage. I twisted it slowly, and as the door creaked open, a chilling gust swept past, carrying with it the scent of decay and despair. I held my breath and stepped inside, bracing myself for whatever horror lay beyond. Inside the dim room, I found a table strewn with dusty relics, but what caught my attention was a shattered mirror against the wall. My reflection, twisted and warped, stared back at me, fragmented pieces revealing glimpses of spectral forms swirling just beyond the glass. Shadows danced across the surface, and the twins' faces appeared fleetingly, merging with the cracked surface as if they were held captive within the glass itself. "Help us!" the murmur rose again, overflowing with urgency, mingling with tortured howls that wailed through the air, shaking me to my very core. But there, among the chaos, something shifted. A darker figure emerged from the depths of the mirrorin amorphous, mist-like silhouette coalescing into malevolence that reeked of death and vengeance. As it solidified, sinister eyes locked onto mine, cold and calculating, and a feeling so intense it paralyzed me coursed through my veins. Terror consumed me, the realization dawning that the entity was not only aware of my presence but had been waiting. For me, the mirror was not merely a reflection. It was a portal, a doorway to something unnatural, a descent into madness and despair where the twins were ensnared in a loop of suffering. And even as the figure advanced, tendrils of darkness extending toward me with a malignant intent, a cry erupted from behind Meth twins' voices breaking through the veil of shadows, urgent and pleading, "Help us! Do not turn away!" As the figure lunged, and the ghastly breath of the twins drawn into despair clawed at my mind, I knew I stood at the edge of an abyss from which there might be no return. All the horrors I sought to escape coalesced, twisting together in a final revelation just behind my rapidly closing vision. And in that moment of horrifying clarity, a voice broke through the screams, chilling me to the bone. "Time is running out. You are not alone." I spun around, heart racing, but the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me in with the darkness, leaving me teetering on the precipice of the unspeakable. The sound of the door's thunderous closure echoed through the chamber, an ominous declaration that I was trapped with whatever malevolence lurked within. Shadows flickered, swallowed whole by the wailing cries that danced between the tangible and the spectral, weaving intricate patterns of fear across the room. Panic throbbed in my chest, and every instinct screamed for me to escape. Yet I remained rooted, the pleadings of the twins reverberating in my mind. "Help us!" Their cries crescendoed into a chilling choir, the urgency clawing at my sanity. But there was something else, a presence lurking just out of sight, a weight pressing against the air that breathed life into the whispers. The darkness thickened around me, rising from the shadows like a tide intent on drowning my resolve. I turned back toward the mirror, drawn in like a moth to a flame. The ethereal figure continued to sway behind the glass, its form ever shifting, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. It was waiting for me to reach for that cursed portal, to embrace the resolution, whatever hell it promised. Yet, as I took a step closer, a sudden rustling behind me pierced through the cacophony, each sound sharper than a knife, and each sway of the room deeper. I glanced over my shoulder, the flickering light illuminating strands of hair that floated, suspended in the air as though caught in a windless storm. I stumbled back, heart racing, catching sight of movement in my periphery. They stood, two figures shrouded in veils of shadow, their outlines vaguely resembling children but twisted by torment. Please, one reached an ethereal hand toward me, fingers elongated and claw-like, eyes wide with wild sorrow. "You mustn't leave without the truth." The other figure, the other twin, mirrored the despair. "They know. They've always known." I felt a splintering ache in my chest. A rush of memories, snippets of laughter and sunshine, clashed with layers of pain and grief. I tried to shake off the mounting pressure, to refuse their pull, but the air thickened, making me feel heavy and leaden. "Who knows?" I gasped, my words barely rising above the chaotic echoes pressing in on me. "What truth?" "The one who watches," they chorused, drawing nearer, their features blurring into a hazy amalgamation of childlike innocence and grotesque despair. "The one who feasts on your fear and ours." I end that moment. The oppressive darkness flickered, revealing a grotesque room beyond the mirror's boundarious space, distorted and twisted, littered with relics of lost souls tied to the twins' confinement. A weathered cradle swung eerily at the corner like a pendulum, each creak a reminder of the innocence shattered long ago. Disfigured toys lay strewn about, and an overwhelming sense of sorrow seeped into my bones. Suddenly, the entity behind me surged forward, its breath a frigid gust that blasted against my skin, filling the air with an intense malice as it breached the confines of the mirror. Dark tendrils snaked around my ankles, pulling me toward the center of the room, where the whispers melded into a deafening roar. Foolish child. It sneered, voice like shards of ice grinding together in my mind. You will join them in their torment. A new soul to fill the void. I struggled against the pulsing grip of the shadows, a deep, gnawing dread swirling within. The twins screamed in unison. Fight back. You are stronger than you know. With a wrenching determination I didn't know I possessed, I thrust my arms outward, grasping at the remnants of light that flickered within the darkness. Stop! I roared, refusing to be consumed by despair. It was as if my defiance sent a ripple through the air, a momentary fracture in the curse that bound me. But the moment of hope shattered when the shadows screamed, screeches of pain and fury wrapping around me like barbed chains. The twin figures dissolved into nothingness, their faces fading away, replaced by an onslaught of anguished visages lurking in the depths of the shadows, drawn by the scent of my fear. Your time is near its end, the entity rumbled, its voice low and guttural, cutting through the deafening chaos. I could barely breathe under the weight of the terror that clawed at my throat. I was losing my grip. And then, just when I thought all was lost, a flash of light erupted from the mirror, blinding in its ferocity. The figures writhed, recoiling as if burnt by the brilliance, but the light coalesced, morphing into two distinct shapes, two children, their forms shimmering, faces imbued with a knowing fragility. Seek the heart of the house, they whispered, barely audible above the impending chaos. The heart will reveal the truth, and a way to save us all. But before I could respond, the darkness surged, the tides of shadow pulling me deeper into the maw of despair. No! I screamed against the encroaching horror as the shadows consumed the radiant figures, spiraling into oblivion, and as clamorous laughter echoed through the chamber, the last vestiges of light faded, leaving me suspended in darkness, face to face with the chilling abyss I dared not comprehend. Suddenly, a new voice, one I hadn't heard before, slithered through the cracks of silence, one that promised unspeakable horrors. Welcome, dear guest, you shall be the last. And in that terrifying instant, the distorted facades of the past began to bleed into the present, unraveling beneath the weight of my dread. And I realized with terrible clarity that my fight for survival was a mere beginning as the dark maw of the house yawned wider, waiting for my final choice. The air in the decaying chamber stilled, pregnant with an unsettling silence that crushed against my chest like lead. The entity's mocking welcome echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder that I had been pulled into a nightmare far beyond my understanding. You shall be the last. Each word dripped with malice, twisting the last flickers of defiance within me into cold, hard fear. A grotesque laughter erupted again, reverberating off the walls like a sinister melody. An awareness settled over me. I was not alone, nor was I the first to be ensnared by this house's wicked pull. As the shadows writhed around my legs, I struggled to stand tall, resisting the corrupting influence that whispered sweet lies of surrender. Snap! A branch cracked somewhere off to my left and I whirled around, instinctively tearing my gaze from the grotesque forms swirling at the edges of my vision, faces marked with despair that clawed at my recollections of the twins. My breaths quickened, my heart racing as that ancient fear nestled deeper in my bones. Do you hear them? The creature's voice slithered through the air like mist. Listen closer, they are lost. You will join them soon enough. Blindly, I reached back toward the mirror, still flickering with remnants of light. There had been hope in the twins' appearance, hope that urged me to uncover the heart of the house. But that fragile thread felt like a flickering candle in a storm, barely holding on against the encroaching darkness. Find it before it finds you, one of the disturbed whispers wailed, a voice layered with urgency that felt both familiar and foreign. I stumbled backward, feeling a sharp pain as I crashed against the cold stone wall. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape from this mounting dread that threatened to overwhelm me. I turned my gaze toward the far corner, where a faint gleam caught my eye, a wooden door, weathered and half hidden amidst the shadows. Without another thought, I staggered toward it, propelled by desperation and shivering conviction. Each step echoed with the cadence of my sobering heart, nerves coiled tight as I reached for the doorknob. But as my fingers brushed the cold metal, The room shuddered violently, shaking with a ground-splitting groan that forced me back. A series of horrid shrieks erupted, and from the depths of the shadows, the xylophone of tortured voices screamed once more, each overlapping in a cacophony of despair. "It's a trap!" I backed away from the door, the feel of its presence like a gnawing rat at the back of my mind. Yet the desperate tether pulling me forward persisted, urging me to reach for it again. My heart pounded in my chest, each thump a warning against the unseen horrors that crested around me. "Don't flee!" The entity cooed, its voice smooth as silk laced with spikes. "You may refuse the door, but you cannot deny the truth. Just like the others, you will become part of the story, a lingering echo. Seek the heart." I shouted back, my voice small and trembling. I had no intention of losing myself to the house's malevolence. I had to fight, gripping the doorknob with both hands. I twisted it again and again, feeling the metal grow cold against my skin. The house shuddered in response, the shadows gathering deeper, seething resentments flaring anew. But the door did not yield. It remained locked, just as the truth had been, chained tightly away. A voice inside screamed for the easy route, the dark embrace that would end my suffering, a soft promise to release me from my terror. But as that insidious whisper seeped in, the painful memories of the twins clawed back to the surface, their despair and sorrow mingled with the fleeting laughter I held onto, and I would not give in. With a last surge of resolve, I turned back to the mirror, a wild thought sparking in my mind. Perhaps the truth lay not on the other side of the door, but through the fractured glass itself. I took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever horror lived behind its obsidian-like surface. "Show me," I screamed with desperate conviction, a prayer to the unknown forces that lurked beyond my comprehension. That in response, the room trembled violently, and the mirror rippled like water disturbed by a stone. From that undulating surface, disembodied whispers enveloped me, pulling me closer as the room warped into a kaleidoscope of memories, not only of the twins but the many lost souls before them who had walked these cursed halls suddenly. From the depths of that swirling darkness within the mirror, a hand reached out, a skeletal limb of anguish and longing, its grasp stretching toward me. "Come forth," the voice roared, echoing with the wails of countless others. It was not an invitation but a demand, a plea for liberation and vengeance all at once, and as the shadowy fingers wrapped around my wrist, a final vicen crashed over me, a glimpse of the heart of the house, pulsing and alive, a malignancy anchored in pain. A wild desperation surged through my veins as the realization struck. I was not just an observer of their torment. I was the key. The mirror shattered, and in a deafening tremor, the house howled with fury. Shadows writhed like 1,000 snakes, each striking forward, eager to consume me as I stumbled back, inexplicably drawn closer to the cursed heart of this nightmare, a heart that might finally reveal the depths of its horror or seal my fate forever. The last scream of the twins echoed in my mind as the shadows lunged forward. "Don't give in. Finish what you started." And just as the darkness threatened to swallow me whole, I felt the weight of icy hands closing around my throat, squeezing the very breath from my lungs, sealing my fate with a final, deafening whisper. "You belong to us now." And in that moment, as I gasped for breath, the walls of the house seemed to pulsate with anticipation, hunger, and the promise of terrible, unspeakable truths. Panic seized my heart as the icy grip strangled my breath, cutting off desperate gasps that fought against the suffocation of despair. I fought the darkness enveloping me, an indeterminate mass that sought to pull me deeper into its fathomless depths. Yet that lingering connection to the twins' cries echoed louder than the entity's malicious laughter, a beacon guiding me through these shadows of gnashing teeth and twisted faces clawing at my sanity. But the weight of their loss was heavy, pushing against my chest like the entire weight of a horror-stricken history bound within these walls. I had come seeking truth, but all I found were wrathful shades entangled in a nightmare. "Not yet," I screamed, the syllables battling against the overwhelming force